All right, you're unmuted.
Texting.
Let's call this meeting to order at 11:15. This is our study session. Roll call
Cunningham,
Here.
Janot,
here.
Markey,
Here.
Nye,
Here.
Rolas.
Here.
Sauer,
Here.
Worsakki,
Here.
everyone present.
Do the pledge of allegiance. Pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Motion to approve the agenda. Support. Yeah, question and support for the agenda. Do we have any discussion? Goes off, yes, yeah. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? We have meeting minutes from May 14th.
I move that we accept the minutes as presented.
Second. We have a motion and support. Any further discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Brings us to our first public comment. Do we have anybody that'd like to? Aaron?
This isn't about the recycling. I want to let you know and thank you and thank the undersheriff and the sheriff for the Marine Patrol helped us out for our Memorial Day celebration because we no longer have the Coast Guard there to throw out the wreath. So thank you and thank the undersheriff for making that happen. We really appreciate.
Thank you. Any further public comment? Seeing none, I'll close public comment. Brings us to our HR update.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I just wanted to go over a couple of things. We do have some job openings. Judge Mead discussed some of those this morning. We have the magistrate position open as well as the clerk position. Those postings closed on Friday, so I anticipate interviews taking place over the next couple of weeks. We have one EMS full-time person position open as well. We have several new employees. We have Brenda Miller-Goki up at the sheriff's as the sheriff's admin assistant, Megan Cooper on Marine deputy, and Nate Feldbosch was promoted to a full-time paramedic. So we were able to promote within for that part-time to full-time. So that's really exciting. And then we had a long-term employee retire, Kent Adams from EMS, retired on May 30th. We have one ongoing work comp claim. We have one employee on a medical leave, excuse me. And then one of the things that I wanted to point out benefit-wise is, well, we're anticipating a switch from Blue Care Network to Priority Health. This is still just coming to us, so I'll have more information in the future, but I just wanted to put that out there as soon as possible to say we're anticipating a change due to the high cost of the renewal for Blue Care Network. So more information will be coming in the near future over the next few weeks. So I just wanted to publicly say that.
You'll have ultimate say,
Yeah.
if we make a switch, obviously. But as most of you have heard, Blue Cross is quoting us 42% for our increase, for the renewal. And so we'll have more information on that, but obviously we've went out to market and other carriers are giving us a much better rate. But you'll have the ultimate say if we switch or not. It really is going to come down to dollars.
Katie, when you're looking at other providers, are you looking at keeping the benefit level the same?
It may be a different type of benefit, but
Mhm.
it would be the same level of service. There may be minor tweaks when it comes to pharmaceuticals and things like that. That's just because carriers handle pharmaceuticals differently. But really, there would be minimal change in benefits is the goal.
Oh, I mean, yes. So then I'll be continuing to budget for the next fiscal year. Union contract negotiations are ongoing, as well as anticipating moving personnel files to all electronic. Is there any questions?
The EMT position or the EMS position, is that an EMT or a paramedic?
We have it posted as a paramedic. We could, if the opportunity arose, we could have an EMT, and then hopefully the anticipation is that EMT would be looking to become a paramedic over the next few years. That's the ultimate goal if we were to hire an EMT in that position.
Did you say that time frame on these job openings has closed?
For the district court positions. The EMS one is ongoing.
Again, policies and procedures. I know that's always an ongoing issue to modernize them, but you've been going through this now for a while.
Mhm.
Are there old policies that you're still continuing to review, or are we now recycling things that maybe we looked at in the last year or so?
We're reviewing some of them, but the benefits policy is one that I still have to bring forward. So that one is quite time consuming and thinking about the long-term effects of changing that policy. So that's one I've been delaying bringing forward. But outside of that, we're going through and reviewing old policies. I believe there's several other ones, but they're more of a minimal impact. So we haven't just brought them forward yet.
Okay.
I would just ask, once all the policies are reviewed and updated, do you plan on cycling them through either annually or biannually? So the commissioners, I think sometimes they're updated and then we figure they're done. And so is there just a process that's going to be in place moving forward where the commissioners get to review even just the updated ones periodically without changes? I've seen it done at other places.
Well, there wouldn't be updates. There wouldn't be updates without changes. Once the policy's in place, it stands until you change it as the body.
Right, but
Yeah.
the places I've seen it, they just initial that it was reviewed without changes, just to note that it was looked at and changes weren't needed. And I think it keeps the commissioners fresh on what the policies are. I think administration is always aware of what they are and that kind of thing, but for commissioners, I think it's a good thing to have it before them every so often, even without changes.
I mean, it was that, so that's something I could bring forward in these study sessions, if that's what you would like. I could bring several throughout the course of the year, maybe every other month, every month. Is that something that you would like to see?
I would say I didn't consider it. We can talk about it at a later time, but I think it's something we should be thinking about.
Yeah, there's some policies where we go to apply them and see that we've missed something, so those are the ones
Mhm.
we're bringing forward as well. So there are policies that are being reviewed, and typically it's reviewed administratively, and then when it's not working how we want it to, we'll bring it forward for a change. So I think that's something that's a little bit different, is that if there's an issue, we fix it and bring it forward. But I would be happy to present policies going forward and seeing if there was anything that we could change.
I think it's just a best practice.
No, I think
to-
that's great. I
so
like it.
Everybody's aware
So
of what's in place.
So Rhonda did a better job of being direct than I did, because that's where I was going with it.
Oh,
Even if
Good
there's
job,
no
Rhonda.
changes, I agree that there should be some acknowledgement that on a 12 to 18-month basis, HR looked at it, not recommending any changes, boom, it just keeps going through.
mhm.
Mhm.
Because then future boards also know that it hasn't been 5 years since we looked at it.
Yeah, that's great. I would love to do that. I'd be happy to present them. Do you want them presented? Do you want them just in the packet? How would you like to go about that
A
process?
study session is the best idea. This is where
Yep.
we're a little bit more lenient. There's more discussion.
Yep.
And again, there's rarely changes to the entity that I've seen doing it.
Yep.
Right.
But it gives opportunity and, to Commissioner Janat's thought, at least you can be accountable to future boards that these were considered.
That's great. I know there's some that were approved back in 2021 that haven't been looked at, so I'll start with those ones and bring them forward. Great.
And-
I'll start that next month.
And although we'll be talking about this, probably the procedure more at a later date, 18 months is a good number to be looking at instead of like a anniversary of 1 year.
Okay.
But just that it's so it's getting in front of us. And sometimes it just might be, we reviewed it, we are not making any recommendations at this time. We don't need to approve anything. We're just acknowledging that we've seen it and moving it on.
No, I think that's a great practice to establish, so I'd be happy to do that.
And since you've taken the effort to modernize them, let's keep that going.
Perfect. Great. I'll start that with the next month.
Well, there's only 2 people that have said it, but
Well, you.
I think it commits, or it just makes more busy time for you. I mean, you're the professional, right? So if you review them
Yeah.
and don't see any need for change, you're the one that does it for a living. We would just see a policy every 18 months. I mean,
Well, I will
I-
say I wrote them all in 2021, not Jackie. So from being a newer employee standpoint, it may be good for Jackie to go through them
okay.
closely.
I just didn't know if you need to
Like
bring
that.
it to us if there's no change.
Yeah, so 'cause
It
I
makes
would
me
have
busy
written
with it.
them and we both interpret things differently. So from that standpoint, it makes sense for her to review them closely. And that's the idea is these don't grow moldy on a shelf. So I think it's probably a good idea, at least for the first round of them. And then we can kind of get in the rhythm of like, yes, let's do this, or let's change how we're doing this, or what have you.
and I'm not suggesting we do a deep dive on them.
No.
Just review.
Yeah,
But too often I see policies and procedures, they get approved and put on a shelf.
correct.
And nobody thinks about it until there's a crisis.
Yeah, they get moldy.
All I'm saying is let's review it to make sure we're ahead of the need rather than having it thrown on us.
No, I agree with that.
And hate to hammer on Kevin there, but paid professionals that we're hiring are bringing us their opinion. These 7 people on this board are responsible to make sure this is where we're going. And all this is a review process. So I think it's an excellent idea.
Well, I
Let it
will
Go with that.
Yeah, I think it's a good idea. I will say though, a lot of these policies are very legal. And so depending on changes, legal will need to review it all. So depending on the policy, there won't be a ton of room for change. Just because legal has prepared the document, but then on some policies, there's definitely room for change and suggestion and things like that. So we'll have to just sift through it and figure out which of those policies are which to
Just where I'm going is,
The ones that are legal, it's good for this body to have eyes on.
review.
Read
Yeah.
them, Familiar,
I just-
aware of them.
For sure, yeah. The opportunity for change on those just may be smaller because of legal.
because we don't have a CFO running this organization. We have 7 members. And I just think we need to do our due diligence, so.
And I don't want to belabor it, but I'm not looking to make changes just because you've looked at it. But actually you touched on something I think that's important. There could be some statutory things that have changed.
Yep.
Well, if you don't have that program to look at it with some frequency, it can get by you.
Yeah,
You got other things that you're dealing with.
you can have an anti-harassment policy that's 6 sentences versus 12 pages.
Actually, I think that's the one that would probably be coming forward next month too. For review, but, all right, if there's no other questions. Elsa,
Thank you.
thanks.
Brings us to our first topic for continued discussion regarding the Frankfurt recycling site.
So the mayor is here from the city of Frankfurt and for some time now, her and I, as well as Josh Mills and Jesse, had been meeting to really talk about recycling in Frankfurt. As you're aware, the site that's currently being utilized was always meant to be a temporary site. And then life happened and the world happened and it's been that way for a lot of years. But now we're really focusing on how to bring that recycling location out of the grand entrance of downtown and off the bay there. And so we've been meeting to discuss locations around Frankfurt as to maybe where we could put the recycling location, possibly expand the recycling location and what have you. And so what the mayor has passed out today is some really nice site plans, which really tells you or shows you kind of where we're looking at, as well as a memo from Josh Mills and the wetland delineation report that was done on this property. This
And-
property is city property.
Correct.
And so I'll let the mayor go from there.
Okay, the reason I gave you the wetland report, I think it's imperative that you all look at that. we have to have that done. We paid to have this done to make sure we could put anything on there. So that pretty well explains, what area we can and cannot put a recycling center on. The drawing that is on the white sheet is the most current one. But however, it's going to need a little more work, because the last time we met, we thought, well, maybe we could reposition the bins. But, the problem with this one is will work for the trucks to come in and unload the bins. But it's not very convenient for the user to come in. So we're gonna have to, he said, this is really not the final drawing at this time. And the other drawing is the one that the last time, we talked with, Jesse and Katie, it wasn't, we decided we needed to move it, the bins a little differently. And, so, and at our last council meeting, which I wasn't there, but I was told the resident to the north of this site is requesting that a fence be put in there. And unfortunately, we haven't gotten any bids. We were gonna reach out to a couple of contractors to give us a price of how much this is gonna cost to do that. And like Josh says in the in his memo, we are going to be paving the approach off of Park Street that will go into that site so that it isn't broken down, from the heavy trucks coming in and out. So, right,
Is this the one being proposed or is this one?
no, the white one is
White one
is the latest one because
Okay.
the other one, we just, it wasn't conducive to the trucks to come in and dump the bins. So that's why we redrew it, so that,
So the cars come in and then have to back out?
yeah, the
That's
fir-
why this isn't
well,
final either.
that's the problem. I think maybe we could expand this end here for a turnaround,
Gotcha.
basically. This site is gonna work better for them to come in and dump the trucks.
Yeah, so our understanding is, so the truck itself with all the kit and caboodle on the front and the back, they need like 50 some feet to be able to back in, dump and come out well and easily.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of the clearance zone that we have to consider in all of this, is that big space. But we're trying to potentially increase the number of bins because it is the busiest site in the county that we have to dump the most. And then I do know that the city has potential ideas of expanding into other types of recycling in the future. So keeping that in mind as well.
Right.
So whatever design we come up with has to, though, accommodate this over 50 feet for the
Right.
trucks. So this is nice because it has the backup area, but then, yeah, how do you get the folks in and out of
That's
there
pretty
well?
wide then, right? So a car could back up and then turn around in that space.
Yeah,
right?
this is showing 24 feet between the bins right now, which I don't think would be enough for the truck unless they backed in on a diagonal. But then we'd have to talk to the driver when we
Yeah.
get down to those logistics as to how that would work with the trucks itself.
So the bigger trucks would be the only ones that would have to back up. Domestic cars could turn within that space.
I think so, because that's almost, I don't know, what's the width of a road?
30 feet, I think.
30 feet, so almost, yeah,
Oh, close enough.
yeah. Not with a truck probably, but maybe a Honda Civic.
I can do it.
So, I mean, it's, and like Josh said, this isn't actually the final one, but, yeah, we tried with the in and out. And when we were talking with Jesse and Katie about that, that's where we came into the problem of needing 50 feet.
Right.
In order for those trucks, and that came right from
DFL, yeah.
GFL, yeah.
And it's 50 feet wide.
And can I ask, what was wrong with this one? Why didn't that fly?
Because
Because
one,
of
it
the width
wasn't
to
wide
back
enough,
up?
yeah. And, yeah,
Yeah, that one wasn't one.
so, yeah,
And I think based on the wetland delineation, if you look at the shape,
right.
there was
right.
issues with the wetland there too, and the distance needing to be maintained. Yeah.
That was one of the things, I know, Mayor, you weren't there, but I was at that meeting when the citizen came to the podium. They were concerned about the noise. Are you going into the wetlands and what the pavement is? Is it permeable? Is it something that will be able to leach the liquids away?
The only thing that we're going to pave is
The
the
entry.
entrance, so that it doesn't break down the
Right,
thing.
I see that.
The thing you have to keep in mind, with the surface that you use, when these trucks are full, they're very, very, very heavy. And actually using a blacktop won't work because it's just gonna melt in the summer and they're gonna sink. And so it's actually better to use like a gravel base, because then we don't have this, hot asphalt sinkage issue. But we're still working on those details.
Okay, but those were some of the questions that came up with the concerns.
Well,
And the
and
noise.
that is why that we're going with the gravel instead of, and
No, the
that
gravel-
is the problem that we are having right now with the current site is that blacktop gets hot and we've got a lot of divots.
The truck
that
just.
need to-
No, I know that
Anything
brown granite or whatever it is, it almost works like a cement,
Right.
but
Mhm.
that's what I've
If we could
seen.
find some recycled asphalt, that is what would really work well, but
And it was noise,
Have some up here.
was noise considered on this? Because that was another thing that the resident brought forth
that's
because,
the only site that we have as a city, piece of property that we would be willing to facilitate a recycling. We have no other site besides that.
The
Yes.
other option is to pull out of Frankfurt, which we all know that's not a great
That's-
idea.
And where would you
Well,
go?
that's where-
Exactly.
well, and it's also highly used.
Yeah,
Right.
so, I mean, it's a service that is really, really needed. But anyway,
Mayor, one more question. for
Yes,
this side
ma'am.
of the table. Is there any reason this is the option where you pull in one way and then the one way goes around? Can you narrow the center island to create that space to back up?
we did talk about that.
Yeah,
didn't
we talked about taking out the island and just
Right.
making it one big open space, and that might be an
Just a divider in
opportunity
the
as well.
center, so everybody wasn't going willy-nilly in there.
Yeah, and that might be an opportunity as well. We'll have good signage, those sorts of things. So, part of today's conversation is to kind of give you an update and give you kind of this is where we're heading and this is what we're looking at. But also part of this conversation is to talk about costs. So obviously, right now, this area is shrub brush and, a little marshy field. And it
Wetland.
really needs to be cleaned out and built up and excavated and all those sorts of things. And so, part of today's conversation is to talk about the willingness of cost sharing between the two entities, to do this. We don't know how much it's going to cost yet. Like the mayor indicated, we didn't have time to get some numbers together. But we wanted to kind of talk about this cost sharing relationship and what that might look like. Obviously, it's a county program that the residents contribute to. And we have those all around the county, Save a Lot, Honor, Thompsonville and such. And so we just want to talk about that. This site itself would be the largest and it would need the most prep work to make successful. The other ones, is my understanding, is there wasn't a ton of prep work to do because the sites were kind of almost ready for the bins that were placed there. And so we haven't fully went down a path of cost sharing and really building a recycling site yet. And so this is kind of uncharted territories as to how we proceed down this partnership. So,
Well, and I will take back the suggestions, about the turnaround.
Great idea, by the
The
way.
island and that. And we've already invested in our engineer to do these drawings and stuff for us anyway, so. as well as the wetland study.
I'd be curious to know why it wasn't considered before this was brought up. There might, it'll be interesting to find out if there's something within that space that they need to leave it. So,
They utilize it here. Go
okay,
right down the center.
so it'll be interesting. See, with respect to cost sharing, does the hauler financially benefit from this?
The hauler itself, like GFL,
Yes,
they're charging us as if they're charging any other waste pickup person.
So much a cubic yard.
Yeah, so much a cubic yard. We have a contract with them. We were able to negotiate an extension of the existing contract, so our fees aren't going up this year, very much. But no, I mean, they're a private business and we're paying them as a paying customer.
Okay.
I will say that our recycling bins are so heavily used and busy that the hauler struggles with Benzie County in the sense of keeping up on things.
and it's somewhere along the line, I remember reading where the haulers by state rules had to have so much recycling within their business unit. So not only is there financial benefit, it helps them stay in compliance.
It could be.
Where I'm going with that is, should we be approaching them about helping us with any of this cost?
That won't happen.
It won't happen.
It's too bad that we can't go back to the original site.
Yeah.
I don't know if anybody knows that gentleman well enough to try and negotiate with him, but
Yeah.
where's where the old Inco plant used to be. It's still on Parkview, but there's Storm Cloud and then there used to be Inco where they did downriggers.
So
And s-
between Storm Cloud and Graceland.
Thought it was
No, no,
Rainier's
no.
property.
Used to be right here.
Rainier's property. Yeah, it is now. Forget his first name, Rainier, but anyway.
And did the city or the
And well, and
county-
Graceland did have their offices in there. And but now they've moved across where,
Come in there.
across from their other plant. So,
And did the city or the county pay Mr. Rainier or the owners of the property to utilize it?
No.
Believe so.
no,
Kind of voluntary, I think.
And were we asked to move them? Did the owner ask they be moved?
Yes,
He
something
did.
happened.
yeah,
Can't remember.
it
exactly what.
was a big thing.
And that's why they were temporarily put
Yeah.
where they're
Yeah.
at now.
And yeah,
There-
there was,
So GFL and American Waste, they're exceeding their recycling standards. I'm sure if you've ever been to their plant, you would see that. The willingness of them helping to pay for some of this, I think they would probably laugh at. I mean, they're a multi-million-dollar business and they wanted to raise our rates this year and it was quite the negotiation. I don't see them having any willingness to assist financially in any way.
Okay, I understand that, but if you don't ask, you don't really know, sir. And who knows? Maybe you catch them on the right day or under the right circumstances. I'm
well,
just
if
saying,
any,
that is, it's something to think about anyway.
Mm.
like I said, we've reached out to two contractors to give us a bid on brushing it out and putting the gravel in and stuff like that. If any of you have a contractor that you would like to throw out there too, we'd be more than happy.
Advertise.
And this is
Not yet.
a lot of time on Josh's part, to reach out for these contractors to get bids.
My only concern is until we have a price, I don't know where we can go.
With the cross
Yeah,
costs.
so and
Like I
we need
said.
to advertise too for you,
Pardon me?
Well, we need to
for
get
contractors.
to a final design before
Right.
we can accurately advertise. Josh was just reaching out to contractors he's worked with to have them give him a,
Yeah.
Cloud9 kind of idea.
Just give us a baseline.
yeah, yeah. So, but once we have a plan actually kind of secured somewhat, then we can do a true RFP to
Is the
see what the
site
cost
level
share
or
is
does
gonna
it
be.
require fill?
I don't think where it's drawn out, it will require fill, maybe a little bit.
We gotta get rid of that.
Somewhere Josh has said. No,
think they need
he
to.
just says clearing and grub, grade and place gravel. That's pretty much.
And
So
then the fencing.
Have you
there
been-
might be on the, you know, it kind of goes
Around it,
down from the
basically.
road.
Okay.
So once
Yeah,
the
so kind of-
approach has been put in by the city, once we do Parkview, we're gonna be doing that in the fall. So you'll have a better idea.
Does Eagle have to be involved in this?
This is Eagle.
Mhm.
This is Eagle's approval.
Okay, so
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 having
as
read
long as we
this,
stay within
Pardon me?
certain.
I don't see that Eagles approved this. This is just GEI's opinion.
But this has been passed on to Eagle
Mm-hmm.
and Eagle has approved it.
Okay. well,
We
okay.
don't have anything in writing.
Because I don't see a Eagles approval in it.
Right.
either. Yeah,
So-
this was done in 2019.
Yeah,
Is it still valid today?
yes.
Mm-hmm.
He did check with them on that again. And we did have Eagle there walking the property. They had a bunch of interns there. So they did walk the property and they confirmed. And it wasn't that long ago, so.
Well, from my perspective, I mean, the two things that I feel qualified to weigh in on is design, that's not my thing. But I believe that we do have to have a location in Frankfurt. It's the busiest, it's the greatest population, all of those things. I think that would be a disservice if we moved it away. And I believe that there should be some cost sharing on the county's part. But to Gary's point, I mean, that's not something we can even talk about yet, so.
Until we get some prices. Yeah.
Okay.
Agreed. Sorry, we tried to
Yeah.
get them by this date,
I think
but
it's good to start the conversation.
yeah.
Well, and we
But
want
I
to.
just wanted you all to be aware of what we've been talking about for about the last year,
Yeah.
6 months.
Yeah.
Yeah, so,
We wanna
And it's a great
demonstrate this
location. I
forward
think it'll be
motion.
Highly used.
Mhm.
The other question I had is the fence locked in stone?
it,
Is that just a wish by the other property owner?
no, we did talk about that when I met with Katie
Mhm.
and Jesse, to be courteous to that. I mean, he has a business there. He has antique cars and stuff like that that are in that building, and I think it would only be appropriate, I guess, is the word, to put a fence there.
He opens that up almost as a museum for people
Yeah.
to go through.
Exactly.
He's got an extensive collection there.
Very extensive. He's got 2 buildings.
It's not like he's just storing vehicles.
No,
Okay.
I don't have a problem.
and he
with that.
does do tours through there.
Cause there's an added cost too. We need a price on that.
Yeah. So we will try to come up with a final-ish design so that we can actually draft a true RFP and publish. And then hopefully we get some proposals back. And then we can approach this cost sharing idea of timing and cost and who pays for what and blah, blah, blah.
That makes sense.
I will meet with our engineer and pass on, and I think it would work better if you could just drive around, but we're trying to place as many bins as we can
Yes.
at that site because I just stopped there this morning and they're already full.
The trouble is GFL only has so many bins and Benzie County sold theirs years ago, so we don't have our own anymore, is my understanding. So we'll be able to request bins, but we don't know if GFL will be able to provide the additional bins. So we'll have to cross that bridge later as well.
Well, when I was at the site this morning, they're gonna have to replace one
Are
because the top is caved in into the bin, so
That's
yeah.
not good.
And with respect to access, if you look at the other locations, I mean, I think it's a good design. It doesn't direct people on which way to come in and leave. But anybody with any common sense can see, don't block somebody else in.
Right.
I mean,
Have signage.
so that would be to Rhonda's point of being able to fill in that location and make it a bigger lot.
Yeah.
And probably putting additional bins out at existing locations doesn't help the Frankfurt issue at all, does it?
I mean, I'm guessing maybe some people from Frankfurt may jet up to Save-A-Lot, but other than that, probably not.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, we get a lot from the north and the south.
Yeah.
As well as city proper.
Not much from the west.
You can tell everyone's coming
Yeah.
back for the summer because
City
they've really got
property.
it bad.
Is there much of a problem with people dumping their household waste there?
We've had,
Yeah.
yeah.
And probably pretty hard to enforce.
Yeah, so on the ARPA list is cameras. We'd really like cameras at all the sites. It's my understanding some of the sites do have cameras, but they're very, very old and they're not worth it to. But cameras would be ideal so that we can see actually what's going on and potentially work with the prosecutor and the sheriff's office to do some enforcement. Because yes, there is issues. You'll drive by and there may be a couch at one, because why not, I guess.
I think,
Yeah.
I think Josh has got one at our site right now because he's got this sign out there. This morning I
Yeah.
noticed that and says you're on camera.
Camera now.
So,
And actually, the signage is as important as the
Yes.
cameras.
Yep.
Yes,
Because it can be, for some people, it'll intimidate them. For other people, they just don't care.
right.
It does the signage say right now that commercial is restricted, commercial businesses.
I'd have to go to the sites and actually look. I don't know.
If they do, it's in real fine print.
Right, yeah. So I think there's some improvements to be made to the sites in general around Benzie County. Obviously, cameras would be huge. I think there's some lighting issues at some of them as well.
Yeah.
Signage issues specifically. So, as part of our next conversation we're about to have, this is kind of an opportunity to take a step back and kind of make a list of this is how we're moving forward.
It's unfortunate, but in my experience, a lot of the people dumping a whole household waste there coming off the campgrounds.
Yes, and it's Airbnbers and it's our seasonal population a lot of times. Not saying our residential population's not
Yeah,
doing
no,
it.
I'm gonna say, go
But
over to Thompsonville and you
yes,
figure out it's.
yes, but we notice an uptick during the seasonal times of the year.
yeah, yeah.
I don't know what the solution to that is.
Even at the school with the car.
Our solution's walking out right now. What are you talking about?
Yeah.
So,
He's not even
Thank you,
listening.
Mayor.
any other questions? Like I said, I'll take this back.
Orders.
Yeah, I got marching orders to go back and
Thank you for all the hard work.
retry. And like I said,
I'm sorry.
engineers aren't cheap, so we have, we'll keep.
Do you know when we can expect getting an updated version?
Pardon me?
Do you know when we can expect getting an updated version?
Probably, what's your next meeting?
June 25th.
The 25th? I'll
Maybe
try.
maybe
I'll try
July.
for the
Just to-
25th, maybe
okay.
July.
Doing the study.
And maybe by then we'll have a price too.
Yeah, some rough.
That would be
prices.
great to have that.
So we'll go from there.
Evan just made a good point, though. No study session on that at that date. So don't push them to get a date that doesn't mean anything.
Yeah, we'll try.
Would this stay within a study session discussion?
I think for now it should.
Yeah.
So the next date of a study session is what?
July.
There you go.
Okay. That gives us plenty of time.
Yeah.
Thanks, Evan.
I'll give you that.
Okay.
Thank you.
I should have had you
Thanks.
what he said.
July 9th.
Thank you. All right, let's
I'm a fixer.
move on to the discussion regarding future of material management.
Yes.
Options for Benzie County.
So solid waste and recycling, the state has now dubbed it materials management, not solid waste and recycling. So as you know, we have a vacancy in that role, right now. And so our office is kind of filling in and managing where we can. And so we didn't just automatically, post for this position, because we wanted to kind of talk about it first and really determine what is the best way to move forward for Benzie County. Is it a full-time position? Is it a position? Is it a contracted service? What is it? This budget is a tight budget. There's not a lot of room for improvement to salary and wages and benefits, because it's such a tight budget. We only fund this whole program with that levy, and just the recycling program itself is over half the budget. So there's not a lot of opportunity to make modifications to make this a very attractive position for somebody. The current salary is right around $40,000, which is entry level in wage for most of our positions across Benzie County. So I've been approached by some haulers in the area who wanted to maybe talk about the opportunity to contract the services that were being provided by that position versus fill that position. So our office has now been managing it for about a week and a half, 2 weeks. And I can tell you, leading up to the event, we were a call center, but now that the event's over, we've gotten about 1 call. So I'm not sure if it makes sense to fill that as a full-time position. Just because we already have site attendants who are doing the walking around to the sites, and those were already in place before the situation that we were in. So those site attendants were already a position that we held. So they're keeping an eye on the sites. Now there's 3 events that need to be managed. There's calls and emails that need to be responded to. Outside of that, I mean, I know that position would get a call on a Saturday to pick up the couch off the side of the road, which, so I'm wanting to hear from you. How do you want to move forward with this? Because I can publish it for a $40,000 salary. I don't know what I'm going to get.
What would a contractor, if we were to contract this out, what would that look like?
So we would negotiate a contract with the services that need to be fulfilled. So obviously we'd take a look at the job description, which there is a draft job description in the packet for you. We would take a look at that job description and negotiate a contract to meet the needs of that job description, knowing that some of the items in here could be handled by other individuals, like the budget specifically. That would be our office who would manage the budget piece of it. But we would negotiate that contract as to what that contracted position is doing for us. Now, I will compare it similarly to the level 2 appraisal services for equalization. We couldn't fill that position, and so we contracted those duties for equalization. And honestly, that's been the best way to go. We've been very happy with the service doing it that way. And so we would have to evaluate what that contracted position would do and what we would have to take on in a different department.
Could we save money if we contracted?
I don't know yet.
I'd say, I would think it's worth looking into if we can provide the same service and possibly save money.
Right. So obviously there'd be no benefits associated with that. And then, whatever the contracted fee would be versus the salary and benefits we were paying now, that would be the comparison there. And I'm not saying we wouldn't find an amazing person. Just looking at the trend, looking at the wages, looking at, the responsibilities, the wage that we could offer without pulling from the general fund doesn't really meet the expectation of this position.
I think it's good that you're looking at it differently. I could find weaknesses in it. I could find
Yeah.
strengths, but we really won't know what those are until we would get into the relationship. And
Right.
You have a 1-year contract with them with the opportunity to extend it if you don't like what's happening. And, because again, I could make you a laundry list of things that are probably gonna be problematic.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know unless we're actually in it.
Mm-hmm.
The management, the people that oversee those sites, I've heard frequently, it seems like in the last few months, how there's a lot of garbage sitting around.
Mm-hmm.
So the management of those people that are overseeing the sites seems like that needs some improvement.
Yeah, so that's why we just hired the second site attendant 2 weeks ago, is because I was getting a lot of feedback that there was garbage and that the sites looked very poor. And so we hired a second site attendant to help hopefully improve that. We've also spoke with the site attendant who's been on the docket for some time and, asked him to work on that specifically. So we're trying to approach that.
So would your proposal be to retain the site attendants, or would it be to contract out with a company for the 3 events and have them provide for the cleanliness of the sites?
I think if I had it in my perfect world, we would contract with an entity or persons to manage the events and manage these sites on behalf of Benzie County. And they would take that on. We would manage obviously the budget and the payments of things. Obviously, we're still going to get calls and such, but that contracted agency would then funnel the calls for us. but essentially have them run the service on behalf of Benzie County.
I would like to try that approach.
This is also a really interesting time in materials management because of this plan that we're approaching. And, you know, over the next 3 years, we're really going to be focusing a lot on materials management in general for the county and for the region. And this may be a good opportunity to contract and really figure out what the need is. And then when the plan is done, maybe it's appropriate then that we're maybe hiring somebody and we're looking at other, I don't know. But I think if we're going to approach this, this is a good timing to do it.
And that was my concern, what I was thinking about too. This position is going to evolve and become a larger position.
Right.
So do we want to have someone in and actually cast the net where we are looking for an individual that wants to career step and get into something?
For 40,000, you're not gonna find somebody.
Well, that's the thing for 40 to 42,000.
Not gonna find anybody.
Yeah. And like you've said, is this position's going to morph.
It
We're,
is.
you know, the plan that we have in place right now from the 90s is going to be drastically different than it
Right.
is now, which is going to force this position to morph and expand and grow most likely. And so do you hire somebody now who's not capable to do the job in 2 years when the plan's done?
Or do we contract it out and cushion our time, and when we find, okay, we do need a full-time position,
Mm-hmm.
now we have a good idea what that person's requirements need to be.
Correct.
I mean, potentially it could be that we have some kind of regional effort too. I
Exactly.
wouldn't dismiss anything,
Right.
but you brought up a good point and I think been supported. You contracted out to a third party now. It gives us 12 to 24 months to say, what does it really need to look at?
Yep.
There are gonna be some things that you're gonna have to be alert for right away.
Mm-hmm.
I will guarantee you that there'll be complaints about lack of responsiveness of returning emails and phone calls. That'll be a given. They
Already
may not
is.
keep the sites even as well as we keep them now. All of those things, your office will need to be prepared to get these complaints.
And we already have been for the last almost 8 to 10 months. You know, we've already been fielding the complaints. We've already been making the phone calls. So we're already doing that. When I said it was a call center last week, it was a
It
call
was.
center last week. Poor Rose, I think she felt like she was at a doctor's office and it was just, what appointment? What appointment?
Or they
What
could
app-
want the contract long-term and they might manage it beautifully. and
Yeah,
keep the
we don't
sites
know.
To a level that
There you go.
we haven't seen in the past, so,
Right.
yeah.
That's
Mhm.
exactly right.
So,
That gives you a breathing room.
yes.
The question is could you find somebody that'd be willing to look at a 12-month contract with an option to renew?
I am going to put together an RFQ, a request for qualifications, and get that published and see what response we get. Maybe we get 1, maybe we get 6, I don't know. We will put that together, factoring in, you know, what's within the job description and kind of what the program looks like for Benzie County. We'll publish that and bring back to you whatever response we get, hopefully by the first July meeting. In the meantime, we'll continue to take the phone calls and answer the emails. If there's concerns, call our office so that we can communicate with the 2 site attendants, so that they can assist us with, you know, improving the sites and such. I do need to figure out somebody, we need to figure out mowing. Some of the sites need to be mowed because they haven't been mowed. I know that for sure. But just let us know. We are having some issues with Thompsonville that we're trying to address right now. So we'll continue to do what we're doing in the meantime while we publish an RFQ, and then we'll bring that back to you guys.
And I suppose some of it needs to be graded even, those roads, but
Yes.
we have a contract right now with GFI, right?
GFL,
GFL
just for pickup.
for pickup.
Yeah.
Is it possible that another hauler may have the contract to manage it, but manages it then with GFL?
Potentially, yes.
Poten-
Because GFL is the only one, to my understanding, in the region that offers the recycling bins. That's why they're the ones who do it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, they have the market on that.
That
So
answers-
that's why we're working with them
Well, I was wondering
specifically.
about those bins and,
Benzie used to own bins
right, I remember.
and then we sold them, I'm told. And these are now GFL's bins.
Yeah, we scrapped them out.
Mhm.
So don't we have a hauler in Benzie County that's bid on this before for North, not the management of it, but the pickup of it, like Northern Disposal?
So
or-
Northern Disposal is brand new in the business, and he's working to expand. And so I believe he's doing some curbside right now. He is helping us with batteries specifically. He serves on the SWAC committee. My understanding though is he doesn't have recycling yet. He would like to someday, but he's still working to expand his business. And then there's another young gentleman who has started another curbside, Sleeping Bear is another
I think it's
curbside. The mass market is GFL. They're really, and then there's a few others who are trying to break into the market in Benzie County.
So in all likelihood, we would retain the hauler and just hire somebody out, another company to manage it.
To manage services for the county, manage the sites, manage the events, those sorts of things.
We reached out to Republic Services at all? They're another provider. in the
I have,
area.
I haven't really, the only providers I've been in communication with to date is GFL because they're our current provider. I haven't done any exploring of other providers or anything as of yet. I mean, this all really came about in the last week and a half. So I haven't reached out to other providers per se.
Another
Do you have to have, at a board meeting, do you have to have a motion that allows you to pursue this, or can you do this just by consensus?
I'm going to just publish based on consensus, but then you'll have the ultimate approval on whether or not we fill that position once we get back some RFQs. We may get back nothing and have to just try to then recruit for the position. And so you'll have the ultimate say based on what we received back.
Yeah, well, just for the record, I'm in support of looking for alternative ways to manage this.
Everyone in a consensus, and I'll bring it back.
And I know some of they were waiting for contracts to end in Frankfurt for Northern Disposal
sure.
to get in there. They're they had to wait. That's why you didn't have different competition and everything. Because of
They
the
being
way-
GFL, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's the curbside pickup you're referring
Yes.
to.
Mhm.
Yeah, so that it's not that there aren't companies willing, but I know at least in the city, that was the instance there.
Mhm.
But I think this is a growing industry and I know different connections through various schools, U of M and everything, or environmental. There are people that are interested in positions like this
Mhm.
because they know you're starting here, but it's going to evolve.
I would not be at all surprised if in the next 2-3 years, we're looking at some kind of regionalization
Mhm.
and that the state will reward you financially for doing that. And
Like they are for the planning process. Yeah.
Yep, I would not be surprised on that either.
All right,
So I have my marching orders. I'm good. So we're good.
all right, let's move on.
Zach.
Oh, Zach.
Hi, Zach.
Zach.
Hey, Katie, can I ask you a quick question?
again.
Really only I would care about,
Okay.
but did you get hooked up with Platte Township over the weekend?
Yeah, all is well.
Okay, thank you.
Zach, thanks for coming in early.
Yeah.
Oh, you guys must know I want to get tired.
Sooner than later.
That was our goal, so you could.
I mean.
Yeah, you can get it in, you can even get it in earlier if you, not this fast.
Are you gonna be short one?
Start on page 30.
Thank
You
you.
can't have one.
None for Rhonda.
She knows it. No.
Wow, this is sticky.
What are we doing again?
Master plan.
Just kidding.
We're in the final stretch.
I've missed most of it, so at least it's a start.
Yeah, true.
So,
From home, don't lie.
number one, first thing I want to point out, this is not a final draft. We have multiple people writing this. I haven't done any copy editing. I haven't done any content editing. Really what I was hoping for from this group is just baseline. I'm going to go through what's actually in here. And if we missed any informational areas that you want to make sure are included in this addendum based on the 6 addendums that are in here, let me know. But for instance, you'll see one of the maps that we put in here for infrastructure. It's a regional map, so it's not even zoomed into Benzie County yet. So we've got people who are doing that.
One of the charts is a placeholder. So we just want to make sure that before we make it look nice and sound nice, that it's actually what you want in here. Because, you know, if there's a whole section that you don't want in there, we don't want to spend a huge amount of time going through that. So the goal here, we're just going to go through this, give you a month to look at it. And then when we show up next time, hopefully if you want to, if there's any edits that you want to make that you see over the next couple weeks, you can either shoot them to me directly or shoot them to Katie and she can relay them to me. And then I was told by my colleague who's doing the data updates that she needs about a week more to do that. So I'll send that out once that's complete as well. And then next time come with a refined draft. You'll be able to look at that. And then we'll just communicate via email and phone to get those final edits in there. So 2 more drafts to go and then we'll have it finalized. Any questions before we dive into it?
If I could, kind of like from the 10,000-foot view.
Yeah.
In your opinion, based on other communities that you've worked with, are the goals that we're establishing for ourselves lofty enough? And are we looking out far enough to be a legitimate plan?
I don't have any one size fits all for goals and objectives. You'll have communities that will put 100 objectives in that they say they want to accomplish over the next 40 years. And they put those in there for a couple of reasons. One, because you never know when some great funding source is going to come in, and what they say is if it's not in your master plan, we won't fund it. So they just put everything in plus the kitchen sink. What I prefer to do, and what I think the purpose of this process and why we spent the last 4 meetings doing goals and objectives, is that you guys have a lot of good, what are listed in your current plan as opportunities. You had about 70 of those that were just for the county and another probably 50 that were for the local units. Those are good to have in there. I don't see any reason not to have those, but I think what you guys were looking for was something that you as a commission can focus on for the next 5 years on your own that are achievable. You've got time written on them. You've got a first step to work with. So I think what you've got in here, which are 5, 10 goals, that's great.
Okay.
You know, I've worked with some communities where they have, I just got done with one township. They have, I think 5 objectives, 2 goals, 5 objectives. That's like, they go, this is a small group. We work mostly with volunteers. This is all we can get done in the next 5 years. It's like, okay, let's do that then. So I think this is, if you're worried about not aiming the bar high enough, I think you're fine. This is what you would want to focus on in the next 5 years.
Okay.
Anything else? Okay. So section 1, this is broken into 6 sections based off of everything that was stipulated and the deliverables for this contract. So section 1 is just your goals and objectives. We've talked those to death, I think, at this point. So review those on your own. I won't make you read through each one. But we've gone through those a few times now. So this is the way it's organized is you've got your goals in the left-hand column, the stakeholder groups that you would want to engage, the timeline for when you would want to start, or if it's something that has to be, it's not ongoing after that start point. If it's something that you want to have achieved by a certain date, it has that date. So such as waterway trail systems and having infrastructure and programming, we have by 2034. But then coordinating with the local units, obviously that's an ongoing task. That's something you want to start by 2025 and then ongoing thereafter. And then the first step is your objective. That would be the first thing that you need to accomplish to get the ball rolling. I would view this as a living document for any of these. If you want to review it every year, every 18 months, every 6 months, as you accomplish steps. Once you've accomplished the first step for any one of these goals, I would scratch that out and put whatever the next step is so that you're constantly reminded. If you're onboarding new commissioners, if you have new stakeholder groups that are getting involved, they kind of know where you're at in the process. So I would view this section especially as a living document. Going on.
Before you leave that though, you know, the expression I hear used in the last several years is dashboarding. Is that what you're talking about? Is that you would update that and show what's been accomplished and what the new action date is?
Yeah, so exactly. So the reason we don't have, you know, for example, the goal, promote best practices for improving and maintaining high water quality. The first step in that you have here is just acting as someone who provides letters of support. If that's working well and you find 5 years from now that the county's role in that initiative completely changes, then that's where you want to update your objective. Or the other reason that we don't have 6 objectives under each of these goals is who knows what that looks like after you get that first objective done. You might have something in there that totally doesn't make sense once you get past step 1. You go, I didn't foresee that. Actually, we need to take a different route. So this first step is your objective you want to work with first. Once you've achieved that, or if you need to edit that, then you put the new one in there to get to the next step. We found that that's kind of implementation. It's good to just take it one at a time rather than have 30 objectives and had a good sense of where you want to kick it off.
Okay.
Your next section, section 2 on page 5. This is the state and federal funding / we called it was the ARPA section in the contract, but since the ARPA funds are kind of coming to the end of that time to use it, we broadened it out to the quote unquote, if the federal government makes it rain again, and you find yourselves with another $3 million, what do we want to prioritize? So that was that first meeting here. So this just goes through what we talked about at that first meeting. So we've, again, broken projects down into community resilience and community improvement. Resilience being projects that were unforeseen, pandemic, lake level rise, whatever you can think of, that makes the community more resilient. Community improvement are things that we could really, we could see improvements, implementation of those right away. And then we broke those down further from ease of implementation to degree of impact. And so obviously the ones that you want to focus on first, or if funding were to become available on page 7, are your easier to implement large impact. Those are kind of by definition the ones that you would want to focus on first. And that page 7 is everything that you had listed at that first meeting. Page 6, we go into your survey that you put out for the original ARPA funds during when the ARPA funds became available. You guys did a survey. So statistics nerd in me went through and kind of explained that survey. The second page, page 9 of that, got a lot into, because the way the question was asked, the number there didn't make as much sense if you don't explain a little bit of statistics. But the key takeaway for pages 8 and 9 are that number 1 is what people wanted to focus on the most in terms of federal funding or state funding or any funding that becomes available. So attainable workforce housing and childcare were the first 2, followed by broadband expansion. And then page 9 was the amount of funding that they wanted to see allocated as a percent. So, they could put 100% onto one of them, or 30, 40. So you can see that they said attainable workforce housing, that got an average of 20%, but it had a large standard deviation. I go into an explanation of that. What that means is that doesn't mean that they wanted 20% on attainable housing. That just means that had the largest mean, but that varied a lot. So there were some people who said 0. There were probably a lot of, because they had the highest average, that probably means the most people said 100 on that one, or 80. But the key takeaway from these 2 together is that some of them people prioritized very high, but then they had a lower rating of how much funding should go to that, which I found interesting. So what they're essentially saying there is that this is a high priority for funding, but we don't want to have an exorbitant amount of our budget going to that. It's kind of, the way I interpret that is only if money's been made available from another source. So the main example of that was, let's see, emergency communications infrastructure. So you can see that was ranked as number 9 on most important on page 8. So it's the 9th most important out of those 10. But then that moved up to number 5 in terms of how much funding allocation should go there. So there's kind of 2 ways of interpreting that. The way I read that is that, they it's not a high priority for them, but if we're gonna budget for anything, that makes more sense to budget for it. Maybe people just didn't understand the question. But there's a couple different ways to interpret that. And there's an explanation in there as well on page 9 of how we were thinking about that.
Some of that could be a function of, we think it's a high priority. The funding resources could be something different than the county's general fund.
Yeah, that's how I interpreted it, or the opposite. It's not a higher priority for me, but it's so important that there should still be a higher funding allocation to it. So I think that goes both ways for those.
One thing we know for sure is enhanced online presence was dead
Yeah.
last both times.
Yep, the
Online
enhancing the
presence.
online presence, but that, that was. Again, that could have been interpreted different ways too, because the township and the city are included in there. Maybe they didn't think that the local, maybe they interpret that as the local unit should be responsible for that, but maybe for the county, it's I don't know. Surveys are difficult in that way. You gotta really think about how the respondent was considering the question.
Maybe it's not clear. Are you talking about a county initiative or like a township initiative?
I find most municipalities, people are supportive of them updating their websites
Yep,
and having more accessible, all their features more accessible to the community. You would think that would have more importance.
Well, two things is happening is that the websites are antiquated. And now that they find out that you can dial into meetings remotely, hey, how come I can't do that at my township level?
Right.
But those are two different questions.
and the other thing too is even though that ranked as number 10 on both of these, for example, if you put 50 different categories on there, maybe that still ranks as 10. Maybe this could just be a matter of the other 9 were just so important that they just happen to rank higher, but that doesn't mean it's not important to them. It just means out of those things, it's less important than affordable housing, for example.
So it causes me to ask another question. When you do a community survey, a lot of what's important to me is how the wind is blowing. And if you understand the expression, how often should we do a public survey and incorporate this and incorporate the responses into the plan versus these not changing for 5 years?
Yeah, well, if you're gonna ask a planner how often you should engage the public, you're gonna
It's daily.
you don't want to survey people to death. But I think
We should do
that
a survey on that.
surveys they're good at getting a general observation of what people are looking for. They're not the best at specifically how do they feel about those things, what do they think about them. So I think surveys once every 1 to 3 to 5, however often you want to send them out, are good. I think the more important thing is community events around specific topics, open-ended public engagement. Because again, the survey is just really limited. Even from these 2 questions that we had right here, difficult to fully interpret what people were meaning by their responses. It gives some indication, but not all. So I think surveys are good. I don't think you need to survey people once every 3 months.
Well, no, understood, but I think we need to be alert to what's happening in the environment, both politically and environmentally. And how does that affect how you're thinking today?
Mhm.
Because that could move some of these things around. And we're pursuing one activity when the majority of the community has said, well, you know what, that was important to me 2 years ago, not today. And not because you accomplished it, it's just changed for me.
Yep. And especially considering this survey was regarding, federal funding that became available during the pandemic. Correct. Who knows? The economy's changed since then. People's thoughts have changed since then. So, yeah, I think, every couple of years might be a good benchmark.
And I know that you folks track this, but the majority of people that respond to surveys are older adults, female. And, so sometimes you're only getting a snapshot from a very small segment of your population.
Yep, that's true.
So do I need to do another survey? Is that what I'm gathering?
Well, someone suggested doing a survey about how come we should survey.
We're told.
400 and some.
We had quite a few responses and we had responses from every single jurisdiction in the county. I don't remember.
Total
Because
population.
10% of the population would be what, around 1,700?
Right.
So 1% would
17,000?
be, huh? 17,000, okay.
10% is what?
1,700.
Yeah, okay.
5%.
And I think we had like
Yeah.
480 responses.
Very small.
Yeah, you
percentage.
need.
So it's
you didn't
5%,
get-
you know,
Well, put it in perspective though.
3%.
Most surveys put the response rates between 3 and 5%.
And we had
It's
about,
tough.
we had
Yeah.
about a 3%.
So we're average.
Yeah.
I know it sounds really small representation, but the only time I've seen it really get blown out of the water was when we did the broadband.
Yeah.
And my God, we must have had a 12-15% response.
That
rate.
one we had a huge response to, yeah.
And 20% is statistically significant. That's where you're looking at the results being anything less than that, you run the risk of the results being to random chance. So maybe you just got one group that was really, so 20% is the goal. I've done surveys where we've offered $20 for responses and still had a hard time getting 20%. So you know,
With inflation, yeah, it's like $100 now.
well, this
Yeah.
was 7 years ago.
Yeah,
So,
for
but
gallon,
yeah,
yes.
480 is pretty good. But yeah, it's not, surveys are tough. It's hard to get people to respond. There's a lot of surveys out there.
But going back to where the conversation started, I would like some input at some point in time as to how often do we survey?
Okay.
The public, from my viewpoint, because that gets stale, it could get stale fairly quickly.
Well, I mean, have you done a survey prior to the broadband and ARPA survey before? Yeah,
I can't answer that. I
so,
don't know.
And I mean, I think to the end of what you're trying to achieve, I think the fact that we all attend our areas, you know, that's an opportunity to hear what the community is looking for, if they feel like we're doing a good job or not. I mean, I know people take the time to talk to me. I don't know. It just, I'm not sure if the study is representative all the time of the direction we should be headed.
well, I think it'd be better. So with the ARPA survey, we didn't do like postcards and, you know, it was all online and we just got the word out there. With the broadband survey, we had paper responses and online responses, which I think would add to it. So if it was something we did again, we should consider those different forms of response. And that might increase that.
I will say for paper surveys, we've done paper surveys and we shy away from them because it takes about, I would say about 6 minutes to enter it in to the software. So if you get 500 paper surveys, you know, you're looking at a lot of work to enter those in. So we've gotten good responses from them, but just a forewarning. It always sounds good, but then you're at
And the objective is to
Yeah.
get the responses though.
yeah,
So,
but then you've got 80 hours of
That's
survey time. Yeah.
Yeah.
I got all the time in the world.
Yeah. Yeah, Katie's not busy, so she can do it. On the next page, page 10, you've got some funding opportunities here. We just encourage, and I'm sure someone might be subscribed to the grants.gov page, and then we put all of the federal and state agencies that we use in terms of funding. We didn't list specific grants here because those change year to year. So for example, like the Rural Readiness Grant from the Office of Rural Prosperity, that's under the Labor and Economic Opportunity Department. They have their rural readiness grants are great. I think everybody should be applying for those in this area especially, but who knows where that allocation is in 5 years. So that's just why we didn't include those. But if you subscribe to the grants.gov page, they send out those notifications for specific departments that you subscribe to.
Katie, do we have somebody who's on their job description? You know where I'm going with the question. Do we have somebody that's their responsibility to look for grants?
Nobody that's responsible for looking for grants. I get all the grant notifications and I send them out as I see, you know, like, oh, this one might be good for this department, or this one might be good for, like, I've sent Jason ones regarding water and sewer for Benzonia. But really no, in Benzie County, unless administration finds it, the individual staff persons are finding ones related specifically to their departments, but nobody like lives and breathes the grant.
In the future meeting study sessions, I think it'd be a good topic for us to discuss. Because no fault of your own, I think, by the way, you're doing a great job, but I'm sure we're missing opportunities somewhere.
Oh, I'm sure we are.
We are capitalizing on more than we ever have, but still missing some.
Mhm.
So one of the things that we taught Manistee County, we're doing their master plan. We've worked with a few communities there, and they recently hired a grant coordinator full-time for the county. And the reason being is just if you look at the numbers of funding, in the sixties, federal funding for community development, the budget was, I think, 0.1 billion. In 2023, it was 43.2 billion.
Oh.
So, that money's going somewhere. If it's not going to Benzie County, it's going to someone else.
Since
So-
the fifties,
Since the sixties.
sixties?
Yep.
You look at inflation since then, though, I mean,
But if you
Oh,
account for inflation, it's still plus
1%,
43.1
the
billion.
difference is not as great as
Yeah.
you would think, though.
We've still done really well though over the last couple of years here in Benzie. We've had a lot of money come at us lately.
Mm.
So,
Yeah, we've taken advantage of, but I can give you an example without naming. We've got an authority that's looking to increase the amount that taxpayers pay, but yet there may be another source of funding out there. And if we could make sure we're always on alert to that, we
mhm,
may be able to reduce how much we ask from the taxpayer.
mhm.
So the next chapter, page 11, this is your promoting public sites section. So this really references a lot the 2022 Recreation Director feasibility study. Because a lot of the work that you would want to implement to promote your public sites was really done in that plan. On page 12, that this draws from that plan, this has the map of your cultural sites. And I didn't include a map of the recreation sites because it's pages and pages of inventory. But we do reference that 2022 plan in here, and then include a couple of the, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, about 10 strategies that you can use to promote your public sites. So the first one that we had talked about was the online mapping platform. Again, you guys have those shape files already. It's just a matter of subscribing to someone that can host that. And that's not a huge lift since you already have the files. And then those can be updated as inventory changes fairly easily. It's just an Excel sheet. And you just change if it's an X or not an X. Public-private partnerships, community events, a mobile app, ongoing feedback and input, kind of what we just talked about, having a way for people to voice what they think should happen with public sites. Coordinated promotion with other stakeholder groups, improving accessibility. So we talked a little bit there about like Moby mats on your beaches, or making sure that people can, like the universal kayak launches have become really popular because it allows people of all disabilities to be able to get into the water with a kayak. Social media campaigns are big now, printed materials, and then theme signage. So the theme signage is really important as well. That people know that your sites are coordinated, and when they're in Benzie County, they know that they're in Benzie County as opposed to somewhere else, and that they're accessing a site that's part of something that's planned and programmed. And if there's any of these that you're like, we're definitely not going to do any of these, I can cross it out. Let me know as we go through.
Yeah, a typo on page 13.
I'm sure I do.
Yeah.
I'm sure I do.
No, he already said it.
Yep.
He said it.
No,
the beginning.
I'm going to guarantee you that there's.
Yeah.
I'm going to guarantee that there's quite a few typos in here. I read through these 5 or 6 times before I deliver them to you at the end. So this hasn't even gone through the spell check yet. So
Oh, really?
for sure, yeah, yeah. No, I just wanted to make sure that we had certain sections laid out. Yep.
Content, okay.
Just 2 brief comments. With respect to access to water for people of all abilities,
Mhm.
I believe that could be a unique feature for us, given the amount of water we have around. And you're right, there's more and more launches and places of exit for people that there weren't before. And with respect to mobile apps, my apps gotten into the community, they use their phone to decide what they want to do. But isn't there a difference between a mobile app and a website when you access them?
Mhm.
It's just the platform and the usability of it on a phone. So, you can have an online mapping platform on your website. How easily that would transfer to its use on a phone? Probably, because then they have to go to a website, and, people just want to be able to click that app, have it pop up. So that's kind of the difference. And then you can add some other features in there too, like, connecting it to Maps, Google Maps. if it's like the county has sites that you have to pay to get into, maybe there's a way to do that on the app as well. So
Because you can
it's
catch
just a
some
little
day,
bit different, but it's the same idea.
you can catch some day trippers that may decide to stay if they can easily find out what's available to them.
Yep, exactly. Yeah, and I think that's why the online mapping platform is kind of the first step, and then integrating that into an app would probably be the second step.
Okay.
If you wanted to take it a step further. But I think the mapping platform is the big one for getting people information and locations. Page 15, section 4, this is your public safety section. So my colleague who wrote this section, she reached out and got pretty much all of the information to just highlight what are the various public safety entities within the county, and then what initiatives have been undertaken. I believe in the last, well, essentially just recently. And this is basically just a full inventory of what you have going on in terms of public safety. So it gets pretty specific in parts, but you know, it's just basically a historical timeline of what's happened with public safety in Benzie.
Definitely have to get an updated picture of animal control.
What's that? Okay.
As we just did a lot of changes to the
okay.
animal control facility.
Send it to me.
Okay, I'll walk.
Yeah,
up
let's
there.
celebrate it.
Never had any snow either, so.
That's fine.
Huh?
That's fine.
Must have brought that in a couple years
So,
ago.
yeah, again, I won't go too much through this. This is pretty self-explanatory in terms of what's in here, just everything that's been accomplished. And then she also put in here on page 29, there was talk about a new animal shelter. So she put in a couple of case study examples here, one from South Carolina, and then another one for first responder service capabilities, one that was accomplished in Blair Township and Grand Traverse on page 31.
Are we considering building and construction of a new animal shelter?
The ad hoc talked about maybe like a 10-year conceptual plan of potentially doing a new shelter. Yes.
And then that section just finishes off on page 32 with some funding and program opportunities for emergency services. Section 5 is the infrastructure improvement, expansion and improvement. And I wanted to crowdsource your knowledge of the area on this one. So Katie sent over what she believes is the communities that have water and sewer. We wanted to be able to list those in here to make sure that when we're talking about expansion, we know where it already is. So Katie, and correct Katie if she's wrong here.
Yes.
But it sounds like Benzonia has water only, Beulah has water and sewer, Frankfurt has water and sewer, Honor has water and sewer.
No.
Nope.
Honor has sewer, not water.
Sewer
Okay.
and now, okay,
So there you go. There's one correction.
thank you. Rose and Jackie and I were doing this all by memory. I think you were there too, Tammy.
And then Thompsonville has water.
Yes.
Did we
Yes,
miss any?
water, not sewer.
Okay. Did we miss any in there?
I only got one wrong.
Good job. Kid.
That's good memory.
Okay.
Well, the school had a septic system if you read the.
Again,
You didn't say anything about it.
You get Alberta in there, they have sewer. and
Oh, I
water.
forgot about
Alberta
Alberta.
has just sewer,
Both
They have both.
sewer and water. Okay.
kind of tied in with Frankfurt and Beulah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
On purpose.
And then, so my colleague Mike, he wrote section 5, the infrastructure expansion and improvement. So we talked about road and bridge infrastructure, sewer and water. And again, so we had a fairly difficult time making contact with the people that would have the ideas of where this was going. So it's kind of, you know, boilerplate language of the benefits and drawbacks of each of these, so that you have that in there. If you're going through this and you know of any projects or initiatives that need to be mentioned in here, definitely reach out to me with those so that we can include them in the plan. But right now, in terms of, you know, like sewer and water, we just put essentially, you know, what benefits of sewer, drawbacks of sewer, costs, and then why you would want to expand water. And then we'll have a map of where you have each of those services currently so that you can get an idea where those need to be expanded.
Should we be noting that when we talk about expansion or upgrading of sewer and water, that those costs fall back to the local community?
Yeah, I think
And
that's
then-
captured in the goals and objectives
Okay.
section, when you talk about infrastructure expansion. That the county's role is specifically as a support feature. So if they need a letter of support but not as the lead in that or the facilitator of that.
And that's, an obstacle for them too. It's not just that the county's not gonna step up, it's that even though they know they need it, they can't afford it.
Mhm. Yep. But for example, if it's a matter of, 3 townships in a village are getting together to figure out how to do something, maybe that's where the county can just host that conversation, but not take the lead in funding it in any way.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, we use the expression conveners.
Exactly. So this one also includes broadband. This challenge map here, that will be obviously looking a lot nicer. This is a placeholder map, I've been told. We go into natural gas. And then, chapter ends there, and on page 40, we get into our age-related challenges. So, obviously with the aging in place, with the senior citizens, as well as, childcare and youth-related issues. And then, fortunately, and again, graphic on the last page will look a lot better. We've just finished up a childcare regional plan. So what they did with that is they mapped out the childcare facilities. They mapped out, I'll leave the technical aspects of it to them. But essentially what this map does, and there's 3 maps to go along with it with different layering. What it shows is where are there gaps in childcare geographically. So that map will actually show this is where a childcare facility would most likely have to go for it to effectively reach as many young people as possible and as many families as possible. So we'll include that in there as well. This is, again, just a poster placeholder that they had talked about. But so those are the addendums in draft form. What we're really looking for from you all is just let us know if there's any content that's missing. Anything that you've accomplished that should be in there, any challenges that you've run into that should be in there. Get those to either myself or Katie to pass along to me. And then what will come with at the next meeting is a much more refined version of this. It'll look good. Spelling will be on point. The maps will be finalized, the graphs will be finalized. And then we'll have the full updated the 2017. Am I remembering that year correctly? The current master plan.
I had to really give you a hard time about this.
Yeah.
Right.
Page intentionally left blank. Why?
Because the way it was, the layout in the spreads, you have to have a page there.
Your last page.
Well, in the spreads, that page has to be there. I can't get rid of it for printing.
Okay.
You're taking notes. Tim.
Yeah,
I see where
Leave him alone, Tim.
we talked about,
I think it's good. I like it.
we talked about polling the community for how the ARPA funds should be spent. We spent 2 pages talking about what their responses were. Administration has developed a really good, concise 1-pager of how the ARPA money was actually spent.
okay.
Shouldn't that be included in here?
I would say so, yeah.
I'll grab one for you as
Okay.
we walk out.
Yes. Let me make a note of that too.
Good idea. And how it was expanded, I guess, is what I like.
Right. Yeah.
Well, and you'll
All right.
notice with that, the budget at a glance, as well as the jail 1-pager, everything is really looking similar. I'm trying to brand, and here you talk about also branding. You'll notice everything that our office is putting out here going forward will have the same general look and feel so that we're branding ourselves. So we don't,
Wasn't there a 3rd one? You did the budget at a glance, you
I
did the
don't know.
ARPA funds.
I've gotten real artistic lately.
What was the 3rd one you've done recently?
I'd like
Because they
the-
should be in here.
Jill?
Well,
Community impact.
I guess I'd want to give it some conversation. Those accomplishments being in the master plan, they belong somewhere. Because you need to celebrate those accomplishments. But the master plan is talking about looking forward.
Yes.
I think it's both.
Yeah, but I think it
Yeah.
tells a complete story. If we're gonna spend 2 pages talking about what the community's responses were to the questions, we need to tell the rest of the story of what we did with that.
Agreed. Just not sure where it belongs, that's all.
No. But we're
One
trying
thing's
to
for certain
brand things.
is we need to find a way to celebrate these things.
I think right after the survey, response discussion would be a great place for that. So can you just email that to me?
What format do you want it in? Or does
Doesn't
it
matter.
Okay.
Yep. My pen exploded.
My computer's dead, so I'll do that later.
Great, I'm blue now.
There you go.
Yeah,
Oh, no.
what happens when your pen lays in the car for too long? Any other? Again, you got weeks to review this and let me know if there's anything else we forgot. Again, like Rhonda said, we want to not just look at what you want to do in the future, but also let's make sure we talk about what you've accomplished. I think letting the community know what's been done is always good. So yeah, let me know what's missing in that sense. And then we'll do the edits from until then.
When's the next time we'll be talking about this?
July 9th.
Okay.
The next study session, and I think that'll essentially be the last one.
Mhm.
We'll bring cake or something.
Yeah,
Another celebration?
yes, we'll put it in the plan.
There you go.
But the master plan should be basically on infrastructure and the future. Can talk about, but think of the county as infrastructure.
What do you mean by that?
Things that we need broadly as a county.
Mhm. Yeah, I would view it as what can the county account, right? And then
Accomplish.
what can the county, I use big C, little c county. Little c is the geographic area, big C is the government. I would describe the little c county and then what can the big C county accomplish? Because a lot of you don't want to include things that it's like, okay, the city of Frankfurt's going to be the one that has to accomplish
This is
that.
what I'm
right?
saying. So,
Exactly.
okay, so we're saying, I think the same thing.
Yes, yeah,
Okay.
we want to describe
I
what's
just
going
wanted
on.
to emphasize
Yeah.
that for the group.
Yeah, we can describe, which of the townships have infrastructure, but when it comes to what can the county do
Correct,
to expand infrastructure, we're defining that role for you all.
correct.
Yep.
All right,
All right, I'm gonna go wash my hands.
Right.
all right.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. See you next week.
Thanks, Zach.
Okay.
Good seeing you, Jack.
All right. Are we done?
With that, we are.
We're done with almost done with the agenda. We have the last public comment. Doctor?
You got a shot. You have a shot.
Close public comment.
No, we don't want to do that either.
Oh,
I will say though,
Good.
it's important to listen to the populace, yes. But you're elected for one purpose. You're given the responsibility of making decisions that is best for the overall future of the county. Some of it you have to deal with finances, what's available. But a master plan also goes far beyond what the present is. It sets the road for the future. Sometimes the public is in step with you. Sometimes it is not. But your future, where you're looking with your eyes, is down the road. Whether the public is in tune with you at this stage, it really isn't the issue. It's like, for instance, and I've talked about this before, when you start thinking of sewers and water, that shouldn't be a local issue. That should be a county-wide issue. It's what you project to be able to bring the future, the present, and what is best for that county. Individual people at this stage may say, absolutely not. I like my sewer. I like my septic system the way it is. That's okay, but that's not where we are in history. That's what was and worked.
but we have to have a much better plan. So that is the purpose of why you're here. It's much more than just local. Yes, you have to deal with your funding. And yes, you have to search for other funding if you need it. But the thing is to keep progressing for what's best for the county when you guys aren't even here anymore. Now, will somebody else come along and say, I don't like that, we're gonna go somewhere else? Yeah, that's a possibility. But you can't capture that aspect. But you can certainly plan for what's best where you are now, looking ahead. And that's the whole purpose of these plans.
Could I ask a question of,
Only if you want to.
and I'm gonna take advantage of you being there, and I respect the fact, your comments I give a lot of weight to because you're here in the discussion. Is there examples that you could give us that you think maybe we aren't following the direction that you just described?
One thing, and again, this is why I brought this up about water and sewer. I mean, I hear a lot of talk about, you know, we can't get involved with that because we don't have the funding for that. Yeah, I agree. You don't have the funding for that for doing county-wise, at least at this stage. But that's where your goal has got to be. It's not a local project. Broadband is not a local project just in one community. It's all over. Environment is not one community. It's everything has to dovetail together because you're all part of that program. And that's where your long-term sight has to be. And you want constant input from your community. They may or may not be on board. And there's lots of reasons for that. One is economic. I mean, if your pay in your areas aren't staying up with where your populace is, they don't want any increases of expenses. And you can identify with that. But you still have to say, okay, how are we going to reach this goal, which is out there? That's where the site has to be, especially for this. I mean, that's the whole purpose of this. Not looking at it, what you're going to do over the next year or 2 years or 5 or 10 years. It's down the road. And that's where that concentration has to be. Anyway.
Thanks, Dan.
Appreciate your input.
Thank you. Close public comment?
I'd make a motion to adjourn.
Second.